Shadows of Greed. Part 3. I didn't look back. I kept running, my heart pounding in my chest, the cold night air biting at my skin. I ran through the compound, out into the street, not stopping until I was far away from the flat, from the man I thought I knew. I arrived at the police station, breathless and trembling, my mind still reeling from the horrors of the night. The officers listened intently as I recounted every detail of David's betrayal, their faces growing more somber with each word. Within hours they acted swiftly. David was arrested, but Victor had vanished into thin air, slipping away before the authorities could catch him. The trial was long and agonizing. David, the man I had once loved so deeply, was charged with conspiracy to commit murder and involvement in ritualistic practices. Testifying against him was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. As I spoke, I could feel his eyes on me, filled with a mixture of regret and anger. It broke my heart to see how greed had changed him. In the end, David was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. His family was devastated. His parents and siblings couldn't believe the man they knew had gone so far for wealth. They came to me, tearful and broken, begging for forgiveness on his behalf. They knew that David had made terrible choices, but they couldn't erase their love for him. Eventually, I decided to visit him in prison, accompanied by his mother. It wasn't easy, but I needed closure. David and I sat down, and for the first time since his arrest, he opened up. He explained how Victor had manipulated him, how he had been lured into a dangerous world by false promises. I saw the pain in his eyes, and I realized that though he was guilty, he had been heavily influenced by someone he thought he could trust. Bad company, as they say, can destroy even the best of men. In that moment, I forgave him, not because I excused his actions, but because holding on to the hurt would only continue to poison my spirit. But David would never leave that prison. He was sentenced for life. And despite everything, we all missed him, his family, his friends, and even me. As time passed, a new bitterness began to grow inside me. How was it that David, the man who had been lured into this, was locked away, while Victor, the mastermind, was out there, free as ever, probably preying on someone else? The injustice of it gnawed at me. I visited David again, this time alone. I asked him to give me any information he could about Victor so we could bring him to justice, but he hesitated. He warned me that Victor was involved with powerful people, that pursuing him could put me in danger. It took days of pleading and convincing, but finally, David agreed. He gave me a small lead, a trace that could help us find Victor. I discreetly reopened the case, working with the police and the courts. We launched a secret manhunt, determined to track Victor down without alerting him. His picture was distributed quietly to hotels, security agencies, and other public spaces. We didn't want to tip him off. But what I didn't know was that while we were searching for him, he was watching me. Every step I took, Victor was already one step ahead. One night, in the small apartment I had rented after leaving David's house, there was a knock on my door. The clock read 12:59 a.m., and my heart raced. Who could be visiting at such an odd hour? I called the police, explaining the situation. They instructed me to position my phone discreetly to capture video footage of whoever was at the door, just in case it was someone dangerous. I did as they advised, placing the phone carefully before opening the door. But as soon as I unlocked it, someone threw a nylon bag over my head. I screamed and struggled, trying to free myself from the suffocating grip. My instincts kicked in as we fought, thrashing wildly until, by some miracle, I managed to pull the bag off. Standing in front of me, with a menacing smile, was Victor. I froze in horror. "What do you want from me?" I stammered. He sneered, his voice cold and taunting. "You escaped being sacrificed and sent the men you claimed to love to jail. Yet you're still not satisfied. I knew a girl like you would try to outsmart me. That's why I've been following you since the night you got away." I've been watching your every move and now, I'll finish what I started. Victor pulled out a gun, and my blood ran cold. I begged him, please, Victor, no. But he smiled cruelly and pulled the trigger. Somehow, I managed to twist just in time. The bullet hit my arm instead of my chest. The pain was excruciating, and I collapsed to the floor as security forces, alerted by the noise, burst through the door. Victor tried to escape, but they caught him just before he could get away. I slipped into unconsciousness. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, surrounded by my family, my mother, my siblings, and even David's family were there. Tears welled up in my eyes. I was alive and Victor had been caught. It was a miracle. As I recovered, the police informed me that Victor was now in custody, and they were ready to proceed with the case. I wasted no time. I sent word to the court immediately, determined that he would not escape justice again. Victor was a dangerous man, intelligent, ruthless, and calculating, but this time, we had him. Justice was finally served. After a long and grueling trial, Victor was sentenced to death by hanging. The weight of his crimes, manipulating vulnerable people like David, attempting murder, and his involvement in ritualistic practices, was too great to go unpunished. In the end, I learned a painful truth about life. Sometimes, the people we love can make choices that lead them down dark paths. But we can't follow them there. We must protect our own souls, even if it means leaving behind those who have lost theirs. And while forgiveness is important, justice is necessary to protect others from the same fate. Victor was gone, and David would never be free again. But I was alive, and I was determined to move forward, stronger than before. The end.